And Steve Tolen, good to have you on the Talent Inside podcast, mate.
G'day, mate. Thank you very much for the invitation. Delighted to be here with you today.
Yeah, also, it's really good to have you. And just for the listeners, a heads up, we obviously go back a little bit during I think it was my second job in recruitment. We'd worked together at Manpower at the time, many years ago. I think 2008, was it?
Yeah, mate, 2007 it was.
2007.
Indeed. So,
yeah, well.
Back when I was I was in my second year in recruitment, mate, way back then. So, still going strong. Nearly
and here we are.
20 years later for my sin.
That's it. But thank you. Just for the listeners, mate, do you want to give us a bit of an overview of your background, like where you've come from, like where you are today?
Yeah, mate. So absolutely. As I mentioned, then 20 odd years in recruitment, and it's a story I've been telling a little bit more recently. Mate, what you see is kind of what you get. You know, happy to be known as being authentic. Steve Tolen, Stolen, and mate, the most common story that's got a bit of airtime recently is prior to recruitment. You know, I sold fish for 10 years, and people think I'm joking, but I did that from the age of 17, and literally very working class. You know, in Liverpool, and we had a retail side to the business and a bit of a wholesale side. So we actually built a business with my dad, and that's where I got the taste for sales, and always enjoyed working with people. And like most people, it's a common story. You kind of end up in recruitment. I don't think anyone goes to uni or goes on a course and says, I want to be a recruiter. And I remember going into a recruitment office. It was actually Wise Employment 2005, my first CV, and they were like, have you ever thought about recruitment? And I was like, oh God, there we go. And mate, the rest is history. And you know, even looking back then, I think recruitment served me really well, because you get out what you put in, mate. You know, I've always been good with people. I've really enjoyed picking up a phone, getting out and kind of, you know, building relationships. Always had a hard work ethic, as I mentioned, from a very working class kind of background. And, you know, recruitment, I'm really proud to say I'm part of the industry, and it serves, I think you reap the rewards for those who put the effort in. Then you can accelerate and climb the kind of the ladder, so to speak. So, mate, I'm very grateful and feel blessed for what recruitment's given me in my life.
Yeah, awesome. And what? So in terms of that journey, so you went obviously from your typical kind of recruitment starting. Where you at today, and obviously where's Stolen come from?
Yeah, mate. So 20 years in recruitment. You know, came to us Friday 13th of March 2009. And, you know, I've been lucky to work for, you know, some amazing organisations, you know, some of the largest, the Randstads, through to Allegius. And I've kind of, I guess, bringing kind of up to speed on the kind of the Stolen point, you know, in late 21, after I'd kind of done my time with Allegius, where I was looking after the MSP sales, it was time for a bit of a change, mate. And I think it's a well-known story now. I've done this kind of boxing competition, lost a lot of weight, and it kind of set me on a bit of a journey where I wanted to really become a CEO. I wanted to build a business, and that's where I kind of crossed paths with James Kahn, and Recruitment Entrepreneur was expanding into Australia, and I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to lead the international expansion over here, which was, you know, mate, a hell of a journey, hell of an experience to work for someone like that. And I did that for about 18 months to just under 2 years, and eventually ran kind of Asia, and it was just building a business at kind of breakneck speed. And mates, after that, I guess I took a little bit of time out for it was a couple of months, and what did I want to do next? And I kind of looked and went, well, my skills are building businesses, building brands. You know, I typically work harder than most. I always have done since the days of selling fish, and I just really built a business around, honestly, mate, my skills and my personality, which is high energy, you know, works hard, doesn't take himself seriously, but again, takes his work very seriously. And this fractional kind of sales just appealed to me. And I thought, is there a way in which I can kind of work with multiple businesses? Because everyone has the same problem rather than working for one organization. And that was really where obviously the S Tolen is my name. And there's actually a friend who came up to me and she said, I've registered this domain for you, Stolen+Co, and I was like, yeah, cool, awesome, let's roll with it. There was only one slight change, which was she'd registered the logo and put it in red. And being an Everton fan, I was like, that's not happening. So that was kind of the story behind it.
Yeah, no, awesome. So what do you find? I'm guessing when you go into these businesses, then what do you find is the typical trend of where they're struggling in terms of when it comes to sales?
Yeah, the problems are always the same. Everyone wants to win more business. Tell me a business that says, no, we've got enough. They're just not there. I think over the years, I think the challenges are always there. The tools have evolved. I mean, if you think back to when we started recruitment in 05, LinkedIn kind of wasn't around. It was probably the early kind of phases, what have you. Maybe even the fax machine was still kind of going. But what's changed is you have to have something to sell and people that want to buy, right? That's the common kind of transaction. And in recruitment, UK, Australia, whatever it is, it's still about finding people work, matching great candidates with great clients. That hasn't changed. And it's fascinating, even in blue collar and white collar. Last year I spent a few months working for a blue collar agency with old friend Lisa Bright. And it's the same, mate, right? Whether they're in, so it's matching the kind of the requirements, but it's still and always will be a people business, whilst the tools have changed. And I think what I see more and more in recruitment right now is people have got a little bit lazier in parts, where they think that they can automate the relationship building process. Doesn't work like that. You can certainly use smart technology and AI and automation to ensure that you speak to more people, but the emphasis there is on the word speak. You've got to connect, and I think that hasn't changed, mate, if anything. So that's probably the biggest challenge that I see.
Yeah, and you're really big on kind of like personal brand and standing out from that perspective. So where did that spark? Where did you get the realization from that obviously the personal brand and standing out personally is like a massive thing in sales as well?
Mate, yeah, it's fascinating, and I really appreciate it when people say that. It means a lot to me, because for everything I've just said, I'm a very working class kind of guy, and I think over time I spent a lot of time, because of my background, trying to almost prove to myself that I was, or maybe fit this kind of corporate mold. And then what happened over time is a lot of people started to you realize that people buy into who you are as an individual. You might find other people who are more polished. They might be better at using Excel spreadsheets. They might communicate better on email. That's totally fine. And I spent a lot of time. You're never going to be perfect in each of these kind of areas. So what I guess what I did is I realized that be true to yourself. The Stolen kind of thing. It just created this bit of a brand, and people started to know you for it. Which is authenticity, high energy, likes a bit of a laugh. Works hard, actually knows his stuff, but again, just doesn't take himself too seriously. And when I kind of launched the Stolen brand, which was really about just over 2 years ago, the personal branding is a really good friend of mine, a guy called Mario Beckish, who published author, runs a very successful podcast called Life the Battlefield. And I go to him, and he could see that I was kind of building my brand, and as I just kind of kicked off, it was kind of January 24, you're on a contract, you're not getting paid. And he said to me, first time in 20 years it was, that I didn't have this holiday pay kind of coming through. And he gave me the best bit of advice. He said, Stephen, what can you do? I said, don't know. And he said, you could build your brand. And so I did 20 videos for 20 years in recruitment. And it started, the first one was shot in Manly in front of a coffee shop on the iPhone. And 100,000 people watched the videos over Jan. And mate, it just, there was, there's no kind of downside. It was really, what's what kind of propelled me. And I've really kind of kept it going since then, mate. When I don't post a video, everyone's like, what's going on? And, it's so, it was that kind of commitment, and the key word there, mate, is consistency, So that's really what kind of propelled me, mate. Just that kind of need, and the need to feel as though I was almost doing something that was productive, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you look back on those old videos?
I do, mate. Yeah, they're there forever. So many. It's funny because you're always your worst critic. And I remember the first few, I probably shot about 70, 80 times.
Yeah,
now you get it down to about maybe 1 to 3, right? And mate, people comment even now, and they go, "You're the guy in the park, aren't you? Or you're the guy who does this. Or you're the guy in there."
Yeah.
And it's not too sophisticated, but what I did was I built a bit of a framework. And it took time where I went, it's typically under 60 seconds. I don't sell. I try and give insight and say, here, here's 2 or 3 things that have helped me, or here's my takeaway, or here's a lesson learned today. And people respond to that, and used to look at the vanity figures or the metrics and think, oh, geez, has this one done well today, or what have you? And what I realised over time is, there's these, and I call them the lurkers, mate, the people that observe your videos. And it took, even now it blows my mind, when you walk into a room and people go, I know you, I've seen your videos, it's an awesome feeling. And, because, again, it takes a lot of effort to kind of do, but this is what I talk about when sales has changed. People talk about the cold call is dead. I kind of agree, but it's now making a warm call, and the way that you make that better is by building your personal brand. So that's the best bit of advice I can give you, which is if you want to be more successful at sales, really craft your brand. So mate, that's just my view.
What I like about your videos is that you tend to do them in public, which is like in the middle of High Street in Martin Place. Like it's doing the video in itself it takes some balls, but to actually do it in public as well in the middle of it, is that a conscious thing that you've actually you want to do? Like, have you actually gone out your way to go, right, like, this is the way I'm going to do the content, or what's the thinking behind it?
Yeah, it's I always try and do them out. I'll be honest, I always try and do them outdoors, and just as a bit of a change. Like, people can do inside, you've been in a boardroom, wherever, and I just think the whole thing that what do they say? You got a couple of seconds to make a bit of an impact, get someone's attention, and that's what it is, mate. Like, in terms of, I sit there and I kind of think, people used to say, oh, he's in Brisbane today, or he's here, and then, he's in the airport, where's he off to? Yeah. And the first thing that I talk about, my 5 kind of step sales methodology is the first thing you need to do is get people's attention. And it's exactly what you said, mate. It just stood out. So when I first kind of kicked off Stolen, early 24, I did a series of corporate vids. I had them professionally done, and this is nothing against the quality of the people or the producer or anything. Just people were just like, oh, okay, it's polished and it's this, that, and the other. Yeah. People just really like the authenticity where they went, he's probably on the iPhone. He's even fluffed his lines a little bit or done whatever. But they could see that I was generally out and about. And I think, mate, that's, in answer to the question about being outside, I think people can just generally see that you're having a go. Yeah. And that's the one thing that, that kind of means a lot to me when people pass comments on it. Yeah.
And the one thing that stands out from the conversations that we've had recently, where you've said, like, it's who knows you rather than who you know. Yeah. Like, can you break that down for, like, the people who are looking, like, clinging onto that old school way of, like, selling? Like, because it is that old school saying of, like, it's all about who you know rather than what you know. So what's your thinking behind that?
Yeah, I mean, you used to get hired for your black book, right? I know all these people and this, that, and the other. Times have changed. And again, it is literally who knows you. So again, talking about the power of the personal brand, if you don't have a strong profile, on social media, but specifically LinkedIn, right, in the professional sense, you're massively missing out, So on a typical kind of video, I might get a couple of thousand, 5, whatever it is, right? That's a lot of eyeballs. Like, how many calls would you have to make to potentially have an audience of 5,000, 10, whatever the audience is, right? So this is where that kind of consistency is key, right? The consistency is key in terms of you have to be, if you want to be really successful in sales, recruitment, whatever it is, you have to be the go-to person. Yep. And that means doing a lot more work up front, building trust, building your brand, and letting people know, the problems that you kind of solve before you even look to pick up a phone or connect with them or what have you. So that's kind of what I mean, mate. You have to do a lot more of the upfront work, and it's a grind. Like, there's no getting away from it, And I see this time and time again, when I coach people and say, look, put a post up on LinkedIn. If they don't get like 1 million views after 2 or 3 posts, it doesn't work. And I go, you're missing the point, right? Let's review it over 12 weeks, whatever, and see that consistency. So mate, that's kind of what I mean. You have to do the upfront work and put yourself out to a wider audience.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like, even from my perspective, it is disheartening when you kind of put effort into doing a post or doing a video, and the impressions, or you're not getting too much interaction. Like it can be, but like you said earlier, it's more so the people that those lurkers, as you put it, that even when I've done a video and you're thinking, oh, it hasn't got that much engagement, I've had people message me saying, oh, I seen your video the other day, like it really thought it sparked this thought or whatever it was. So it does have impact without it. You see it immediately as well, in a lot of cases.
Yeah, mate, look, there's only upside. This is the thing. So
that's right.
If you don't post, it's neutral. So, and this is what I did. I continually, I'm always learning, mate. Right. So again, I mentioned kind of Mario there. Someone who's been in front of a camera, done radio shows, and this, that, and the other. And I'll listen to people that have nuggets, like pearls of wisdom, and people would say things to me like, when you're speaking, look at the camera this way, or do this, or try and slow down and stuff. And it was constructive feedback, right? Then you also get the others who then go, well, I don't like your videos or whatever. And I go, okay, thanks, mate. And I had one of those. I remember very early on, someone said to me, I hate them. And I was like, brilliant. And that really meant a lot to me. Thanks for the feedback. And then quickly what they said was, actually, what I mean by that is I couldn't do it. And you go, that's the point. Mate, you are putting yourself out there, you're being vulnerable, you're throwing yourself out there for criticism, feedback, whatever. But take a look at the stats on LinkedIn. What is it, billion users? 99% don't produce content. I mean, there's your opportunity. So, again, as long as you're not posting stuff that's controversial or, political statements or what have you, and it's stuff that says, with me, I typically talk about sales, branding, relationship building, events, thoughts on the evolution of recruitment. If I started giving financial advice, I'd expect it to bomb, right? But so stick to what your niche is and just continue.
Yeah. Where do you think most people are going wrong when they're trying to build their personal brand today? Like from what you've seen, the ones that are actually putting themselves out there, or a little bit less consistent. What would you say? Where do you say people are going wrong?
I think expecting, firstly, instant kind of just significant results, right? Which is, if it's recruitment, I didn't get a million jobs that kind of came through, or all of a sudden, it doesn't work like that. You have to look at it over a period of time and look at the metrics. So I do that. I kind of look and go, okay, what did they like about that video? What was it? The content? Was it the delivery? Was it, like as I said, was it the fact that it was inside, or all these kind of things? So look at the kind of the data. I think number two, be true to yourself, right? So again, as we just talked about, I shoot things outside, I stay in my lane, and I don't try and portray myself as being, I don't know, this overly academic kind of polished. I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and I kind of stay in my lane. So I think being kind of true to yourself, and also veering kind of off topic. So again, as I just highlighted before, if I was giving you financial advice, I'd probably be the worst person in the world. Stick to what you know. And again, that whole kind of inch wide, mile deep, right? Stick to your area of specialism. And the next part of that is, don't sell. And I get a lot of stick for this, is that when you're building your brand, don't expect something in return, right? So, a lot of people think that they just instantly think that it's going to turn into kind of dollar signs. So, build trust, build credibility, and be consistent. They're probably the three biggest tips I could give you.
Well, just out of interest, where do you get your influence from? Is there anyone that you kind of follow, listen to, that kind of sparks this kind of thinking? Because it's not many people have that way of thinking a lot of times. So do you get that from anywhere in particular?
Mate, I like listening to various kind of podcasts, sales. I like the kind of the Brian Burns one, and he actually, that was one of the first ones that really got me. He was walking around the streets in the US with the old selfie stick. I don't know that people use them at the moment.
Oh yeah.
And it's, again, mate, you're kind of putting yourself up for ridicule, when you're, as you mentioned, filming outside and things. So I think what I like are people that don't really give to, how can I put this politely? They don't overthink it, or don't think, well, what if this person doesn't like it or what have you? They're just having a go. And, Amelia Sorrell, the personal brand kind of expert, which I really follow. Like I really like her stuff. Clout is the agency, and then she's got a quote, and she says, just effing post it."
Yeah.
And a lot of people just kind of think too much around, what if I get negative feedback? Well, that's kind of part of the course, right? If you are getting a couple of thousand views, there's a likelihood that one or two people are going to not like your content. That's fine. So I like the people that are just out there being themselves and typically kind of having a go.
Yep. No, 100%. Yeah, exactly right. And so you mentioned earlier about sort of the over reliance on tech, and people thinking like, what would you say is the perfect balance in, especially in the world that we're in now with like AI and I do think there's a lot of there's still a long way to go with AI and automation and that type of thing. So I think even I've signed up for things and then realised it's not what it says on the tin type of thing. But what would you say is the right balance of automation and inside with that is like real human connection in terms of sales?
So I think if we talk about AI, people that come and pitch to me, you're not looking for an AI-based solution, right? Or essentially, what I look at is people that go, "Hey, Steve, I'll give you an example. Outreach is becoming a challenge. Here's a potential solution or a tool that enables you to create more audiences, more of your targeted audiences, and we'll engage with them and hope to kind of potentially facilitate a discussion, right?" And if I break that down, it's not about it has to be AI, it has to be this. It's like, here's a solution, which is, you've said a problem is you're not generating enough kind of warm kind of contacts, what have you, right? So I think, mate, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And I say this to a lot of the tech providers, whatever the solution looks like, it's not the price point that gets me, it's not whatever, it's a case of, how does this fit into my engagement process or my recruitment process? So, that's the first thing, kind of break it down and go, okay, how does this enable me to speak to 10 people like Adam versus, one or two a week, so you're increasing the efficiency. So some of the tools I've looked at, I really like Discover X, which is, guys based up in Queensland, where if I look at this specific tool, is what they've done is they've taken the first wave of kind of automation, which was really just bombard you with spam, and everyone would just be like, for God's sake, seriously? And here's a tool that's sophisticated, but it's inserted into the engagement process where, can send things like a voicemail. So again, it's thinking and operating like a human, but the goal is to facilitate an early stage conversation. If you think back a few years ago with automation, you connect with someone, Steve Tolen, boom, you get this spam message, and then 2 days later, "Oi, did you not get that message?" And you're just like, delete. It never worked. I don't know who came up with it, but they should be, they should be ashamed of themselves. But that's an example of where tech gets it wrong. You can't automate the relationship building process. So use it strategically to engage in a conversation, mate. So that's probably one example that's quite, that I look at and say, I hate it when I'm on the receiving end.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And Jamie from Discover X actually had on as a guest as well, so that one will be coming out soon. So it's,
really?
It's awesome. Okay. Like I really like the approach of it, and even the like what you've just said there. It's that sparking that initial conversation rather than taking away a complete process and actually going through the whole sales process, or even a candidate interaction. It's actually generating that opportunity of conversation, and that's what I really liked about him. And it was a really good conversation actually I had with Jamie last week.
Yeah, but it's thought out, right? It's the efficiency and the productivity, but as a human. So mate, I'll look forward to that one.
Yeah, so the other thing that I'm utilising for myself at the moment is something called MetaView. So it's simply like a note taker, but specifically for recruiters. I found that really kind of saves a lot of time, because basically you can record a conversation. Like now, for instance, we could record this and then it will go into a template of an interview template that you can actually put into the background. So it saves you the time of having to transfer those notes across or to take notes live, like things like that. And like you said, it goes back to what you just said there in terms of what part of the process can you utilize AI or automation to actually for you to free up your time? And I think that's the key, not just utilizing it for the sake of utilizing it.
100%.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And in terms of, so you mentioned, I know we've had a number of different conversations that, like, when you said like a lot of people sound like thought leaders on everything. Like, in terms of from your perspective, what's your thoughts around that? What's the risk in doing that from like if someone was putting themselves out there and as a kind of thought leader?
Mate, again, I'll happily go head to head with anybody on sales, BD, branding, and these are the kind of the areas that I really enjoy. There are the 3 Ps which I kind of talked about before, and as Alex kind of Harmoza, they said people that launch a business, you got to understand that the first one is the pain, right? So, by immersing yourself in there, having quality sales kind of acumen, what that can mean to kind of a customer, you got to be passionate about it, right? So that's the other thing, right? So I'm uber passionate. Anything to do, if I can pick up a 1%er from you on that will help me, then I'm all ears. The passion, the pain, and the professional experience. I've been doing this for 20 plus years, mate, right? Like, so they're the 3 things. So for me, that means I believe I'm qualified, and probably why you've got me on this one today, which I'm really grateful for. But again, that's the thing. I think these days, too many people want to be seen to be the subject matter experts on something that they've just maybe dipped a toe in. Like, even let's take AI as an example. I can have a conversation, as we've just done, and say, listen, I am not the expert, but here are 2 or 3 tools that I've evaluated, and here's how I think they could make a difference to you as a potential customer. So I'll give you an example. I hope this answers the question. Yesterday, I went to see a very senior IT candidate, and potentially interested in their next opportunity. And I said, what would that look like? And he said, well, before I get to that, I want to get your thoughts on this. In my role, with my skill set, what parts of my role do you think AI will take out within the next few years? Great question, right? Mate, I was sitting there and I was like, I think I've got to go. And basically what I said is, and I said, it's a fascinating question. And I actually referred to a video that we'd done. And I said, look, I genuinely don't believe AI will replace you, but in similar vein to what we've seen in recruitment, those in your specific role who are utilizing AI will become more valuable, right? And they will save time, but also you have the empathy, you have the expertise, you have the people skills. And so, mate, that was something there. And he actually said, good answer. And again, mate, I'm not the AI, and I said this, caveat, but enough to say, here's my take on it. So, mate, that's probably one example, and I think, so understand your kind of limitations and don't go off into a deep tangent conversation about something that if you scratch beneath the surface, you look quite vulnerable, because when you put yourself out there and start doing that, it doesn't end well.
Yeah, no, 100%. Where do you, just out of curiosity, just on that, where do you see like AI and recruitment? Where do you see it playing out? Where do you think that's leading at the moment over the next sort of 2, 3, 5 years?
Oh, mate, it's fascinating. The opportunities that it presents are just unbelievable. So, again, the reason that I mean, even that conversation I just had there before is because, and I've said this, ignorance is not an excuse, right? You've asked me the question, right? If I've got no clue, or even just to kind of engage, then you'd be like, well, that's pretty poor. And the next person that comes along who's actually taken the time to evaluate a few tools, with their credibility goes to the roof. So, mate, I've had lots of demos of various tools. Some I think are really good. As I mentioned there before, the kind of Discover X. There's another one called standout, where I've looked at, with Pierre and Carl. It's great, where an AI-based kind of tool that sends emails to candidates. And I love the simple concept behind this, which is the back and forth. The goal is to get you in a conversation. So I'll water it down. Hey, Adam, we've got this role. Thought you might be interested. You reply on email. Cool. How much does it pay? The response, just let me know when you've got 5 minutes so we can have a conversation. How smart is that? It's so simple. You know what I mean? It goes back to, so mate, this is where I think those recruiters that break down the recruitment process and go stage by stage, what is it we need? We need to attract more candidates at this top end. Okay, what's the right tool that's going to do that? So again, highlighted one there, Discover X. If you know what candidates they are and you can target them, you might use something like a Synaptico, which gives the recruiter more time to have conversations, build trust, kind of credibility. And another tool that I've spoken about quite frequently, Recruitment X, which is one we put in Pinpoint, which is basically a CV stack ranking tool where very simple kind of case study. You put in the JD, the criteria, it scrapes the database, and also if you add additional CVs, it stack ranks them. There's your top 5 based on your criteria. We've had, if you've got a team of resources which we've tried, and they're sitting there going through and looking for, let's say it's a BA or whatever, a developer or something, you've got all these candidates on your database. There's 2 or 3 examples, mate, where I think that utilising technology but still managing the human kind of touch and the expertise, that's how I think it can make a fundamental difference.
Yeah, and do you think that the contingent recruitment model is going to change? Do you think AI is going to shift that a little bit?
I generally think, short answer is yes. I think a lot of I had this conversation before with one of the founders here at Pinpoint, and I generally think we could see a lot of the generalists, to be honest, mate, the very transactional people at the lower end of the scale, I think they could vanish because the model's built on inbound jobs. If it's transactional and you're working on panels and this, that, and the other, you are vulnerable, right? What is the value that you bring? So, mate, I generally do think that this is going to be a bit of a wake-up call for many in the industry. I think it goes back to that kind of first point around the personal brand. Think about it, right? If you're in this environment right now where AI is coming in and it's eating up the bottom end of the market, it's taking away repeatable tasks, and it's working 24/7. And if you don't have relationships, you don't have a brand, and you're not implementing these tools which can allow you to build more relationships, then you probably want to have a good look at your business model, like right now, because the innovation that's coming through, like from even 6 months ago, is just insane, mate. So I do think those that aren't really adapting I think many of them will actually probably not be in business much longer.
Yeah, agree. I think that the lower end of the market, so if you think of like blue collar, for instance, like drivers, like those sort of jobs where it's very transactional, repeat business, that could be automated. A lot of that could be actually automated and taken away. And you're right. I think that even from a talent acquisition perspective, I think that if you've got people that are basically just transactional, just filling jobs, I think the ones that are going to succeed are, again, when you were looking at AI, the ones that are looking at like hiring capability, like improving processes, like offering a lot more than just the filling of a job. Do you know what I mean? And I think in terms of also personal brands, it's the one thing AI can't do is it all take away. It's you. It's the end of the day. It's you doing that video. So it's I think that aspect of it as well is those are the ones that are going to stand out.
For sure, I think, and again, I go back to that point I made before. If you want to really, and it sounds a bit contradictory, but stop selling so hard, right? So again, this is what I talk about the approach, which is focus on gaining the right attention of your target market, right? So whether that's candidates, you want to build pools of qualified people, project managers, whatever it is, right? So build your brand and let people know that you are the only choice when they're seeking the next opportunity. Similar thing on the client side, right? So your clients will be hopefully digesting your information, reading your content, observing your videos, and they will buy from the personal brand before the corporate brand, right? And I know this is controversial. It's true. And then it throws off this whole kind of conflict. Well, why would we train these people? It's a fact, right? People buy from people. That hasn't changed. And people building relationships, clients will want to kind of work with them. So I think if you want to get ahead in sales, sell less, focus more on relationship building, because your clients have access to all the information and all the technology that you do. What they're looking for, and they're making a good decision, is will I enjoy a business relationship with this person? That's what it comes down to, mate. And the reason that you got an old fella like me who's still going strong is because, mate, I really focus on the listening, the putting yourself out there and seeking to add value. That's the thing, mate. So sell less and more focus on it, more emphasis on building relationships.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that as a chat, like over the years, if you think back, like in the years of recruitment, like people, I don't think people buy into the company that you're working for. They buy into the consultant that you're working with. So like that's why so many businesses follow the consultant rather than the actual business. It's like you could have a really bad brand as a business, but that particular consultant that's working within there is actually shit hot and gets the job done. You're always going to follow that person. Similar to a personal brand.
100%, mate, and good on them. Like it's, I've seen this. There's people that I dealt with way back in my Randstad days, clients and things, and they have moved on to like 3, 4, 5 jobs. Similar to myself, I've had 3 or 4, and they stick with you. And I learned this very quickly. Don't piss people off. You know what I mean? If you burn somebody. One thing I'm quite proud of is, and I talked about this, the events that I've done over the years, it's such a diverse mix of attendees. You can have a procurement SME, a HR lead, a recruiter, a lot of recruiters. And actually, over recent years, most of the attendees have been more recruiters. And if I went back 10 years ago, you wouldn't have any. And that's changed. Okay. And that's probably, where my brand or various things. But I think these networks and things that you're kind of curating, we used to think in recruitment that don't have Adam in the room or whatever because he'll nick, or I don't want him getting the edge and stuff like that. Mate, honestly, recruitment's recruitment. It's the same, match a great candidate to a great job. And if you're confident in your ability and the value that you bring and the strength in your relationships, mate, seriously. So, it's a great point that you mentioned.
Agree. And you mentioned an event. You're speaking on a job ad event coming up soon.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us an overview of that?
Yeah, mate. I'm looking forward to it. They were obviously after someone who, a bit of an expert in sales and recruitment and knows what they're talking about. And obviously they couldn't find anyone, so they asked me to jump on it. So, mate, really delighted to be invited to speak on this. And I'll be talking through my sales methodology, so my kind of 5 steps. And, this is 20 odd years of sales that I've kind of built and relationship building that I built and put into a process. And I kind of got it down to 5 points, which is really hard to do. But, it starts with building, gaining people's attention. So I'm going to talk about that and, the tools that you need to master to be successful. And, 2 things, I won't kind of give the game away prior to the event, but I'm very big on 2 things. It begins with them. So one is mindset. You have to have the right mindset to kind of push through anything. Sales has always been challenging, right? It's never easy. The rewards can be quite good. But if you believe that you can't do it, then you're already finished. The second thing is mastery. And you're always upskilling. You have to be a kind of a continual kind of learner. The tools will always change. The needle will always shift. And what I'm really looking forward to talking about on the job at events, and it means a lot. I'm quite humbled to get the invitation to speak. Is there's this, the cold call seems to have now become the devil. You know what I mean? And actually, I agree. The days in which when I came to Australia in 2009, we made 60 calls a day at BBT. I couldn't think of anything worse now. But the work that you do up front has fundamentally changed using all the smart technology. And if you don't do that, have a brand, and you don't use automation and stuff, you will fail. So I'll kind of delve into that on the 18th. So I'm really looking forward to it alongside some pretty awesome speakers.
Yeah, I'm registered, so looking forward to that. So if someone's listening now, mate, and they're looking to reinvent themselves and they're stuck, what's your advice for the first step that they could potentially take to get them going? Yeah, so I think the initial that first step is probably the biggest one, and then you kind of need to build some momentum after that. But what's your advice for those,
mate? Just take the leap of faith, right? Control what you can control is a term I use all the time. If a nearly 50-odd-year-old bloke can build a semi-half decent brand and stand there using videos, then anyone can do it. And again, mate, that's the whole thing around being authentic. But go back to that stat I said before: 1 billion users and 99% don't produce content. That means most of them are just critiquing what you do. There's the opportunity, man. There's always going to be shifts in technology. Remember when the internet came along and this was going to change, and LinkedIn was going to be death to the industry, and then I think it was AI, and whatever else has kind of come along, right? Like, you can't. The one thing that you own is, is yourself. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. That kind of quote. So, put yourself out there. Commit to it and be consistent. If I look back now, and even since I kind of started using video, don't take yourself too seriously. Just stick to your niche. It could be technology, it could be marketing, whatever it is, and just craft a brand around that. And don't just look at the metrics as well. The success for me comes from, as I said, when I go to a networking event or I bump into people, they go, "I know you." That to me proves the success. So just take the leap, mate, and give it a go.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So what's next for you and obviously Stolen+Co, mate? What you got planned? What's going on in your world now?
Yeah, mate. So I'm excited about what kind of comes next for me. Towards the end of June and July. Very wedded, and it humbles me that when people often say Stolen, I love it. They love the brand, and the brand is kind of stuck, mate. For me, what I enjoy is helping founders and businesses, typically recruitment businesses or startups, grow. And if I look at all the experience that I have, that's the one thing I've enjoyed. I've been the rainmaker. I've worked on my own. I've led sales teams. I enjoy going in there and making an impact. And that's what I want to do. So helping founders and businesses that want to grow, if they can draw on my kind of 20 plus years expertise, then mate, that's kind of what's next. So more event, awesome. Podcast, and mate. So I'm excited for the second half of the calendar year.
Yeah, perfect. I can't believe you said that you was your second role in recruitment back in Manpower. I used to look at you as like some kind of mentor.
Mate, apologies.
You must have been blagging me real good.
Yeah, mate. It was, I don't know, man. Like it was funny, mate. We both still got hair as well, which I think is quite good. So, but mate, again, proving the point on it. Like, and I said this time and time again. Like recruitment, mate, is such a small industry. Like you got to be careful, like because people keep popping up from all over the place. You're like, remember this, so mate. I learned that never piss anybody off, mate, because it's too small an industry.
Yeah, too right. That's right. But I've really enjoyed it today, mate. Where can everyone, if anyone's got any questions in regards to everything you spoke about today, or get in touch in regards to Stolen+Co, what's the best way or best route of contact?
Yeah, mate. So just mate, hit me up hit me up through LinkedIn. It's on my email is steve@stolen+co.com.au, and sure when this kind of goes out, but hits up. Hope to see people on the job at a kind of BDX summit, which is kind of coming soon. I'm not too hard to get hold of. It's funny because, and it was a good friend of mine, Sean Henry, said I think I should get a desk in Martin Place because I spend a lot of time there. So if I'm not in the office, mate, you'll probably see me hovering up and down Martin Place, mate. So I'm not too hard to get hold of.
No, that's awesome. Well, it's good to have you on, mate. It's all the best with everything you're doing as well, and definitely keep in touch.
Thanks, mate. All the best. Thank you.
Cheers, Steve.